because I think about time from time to time. Oh, I'm such a nerd. I love it. In my mind, that was very...
Hello and welcome to another episode of Contemplations, the podcast. I am your host, Kinah, and I'm very glad to have you here again. Thank you so much for listening. It's been amazing to see how much engagement I've gotten over the last month, and the fact that the conversations that I'm having with some of my dear friends are really hitting home for some of you. It really gladdens my heart, because I do think and I do believe strongly that these conversations are very important. At least for me, they shape a significant part of who I am as a person and who I want to be. Thinking about these things is very important to me, and I'm very glad that it is being well received. If you haven't already subscribed, please don't forget to do so. And as always, I do appreciate any feedback that you have to offer. It really is a delight to read them, to hear them, and to chat some more about them. I love it. Without further ado, I'm gonna jump into today's episode, which is just a concluding part of the discussion I had with my friend Marika from last week. I was listening to it again, and it's just such a wonderful conversation we had. She's so gifted, just such a wise woman, and I'm so grateful to have her in my life, and also very grateful that she took the time out to share some of her wonderful thoughts with all of us, myself included. So I'm not going to keep you too long. Let's jump right into the conversation, and I really hope you have a good time enjoying the concluding part of the series on nostalgia. Ciao. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's very packed. So there are a couple of things you mentioned there that stood out to me, and I made interpretations of them for myself. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my voice. But like I mentioned, and this is a good time to reiterate this, I did not create this podcast for people to agree with us. This is how I show up in conversation, and I'm just practicing it out loud. So people can be making their own conclusions. I do believe everybody is responsible for how they think.
Right.
And people need to own that more in terms of, and I don't mean that in a combative way. I think people always think of when they're disagreeing or when they don't really fully agree with everything, that somehow means they are in a war or a fight. It's really not that deep, guys. Just hold your opinions and embrace it. But I thought you shared some very, very great thoughts there. The first thing you mentioned with your experience in growing up around things like the Confederate flag just made me start thinking about my own experience with that. I did not grow up in a racist environment. I grew up in Nigeria. We all looked similar. And if anything, tribalism would be the thing, but not even really. And maybe I interacted with that very differently, because both my parents are not from the same region of Nigeria. So I didn't have that, but I did move to the US when I was still a teenager. And so I kind of completed my growing up process. I like to think of it that way, in the US. So I did, and I lived in Indiana, that is also known for their Confederate flags. I lived in a little town there. And when you were talking about that, I just went back to how my first couple years in the US was really a struggle, because for people, especially in Indiana, who don't really care to get to know a person, and for a culture like American culture that just likes to put people in boxes. You have dark skin, therefore you're black. It doesn't matter where you come from, what your experience is, you're just black for the demographic purposes. Even we fill forms that make us choose those things. Has nothing, like I have chosen to ignore that. That's a personal decision I've made, because I just feel like it is asking me to summarize very complex parts of myself by checking a box that I don't really think describes me. So I don't do it unless I'm
compelled to, in which case, if there's an other, I write what I want to write there. But it's been something I've been doing the last few years, because it was always something that bothered me, because I came in to the US, I was considered Black, but not Black enough for Black people, and Black still for white people. And I remember we had, because I've always loved conversation since I was a kid. I just love talking about stuff, which is one of the reasons I created this podcast. If something's bothering me, I want to talk about it. Like that's how I process things. And I remember we had these really, now in hindsight, they're very helpful. They were very difficult meetings with the African Student Union and the Black Student Union of our university. And because there was tension between us on campus, and we were trying to figure out why it was. And when we all started sharing our experiences, it became obvious that it's very dangerous to put people in boxes like that, especially from the external, because I would go to a fair, for example, and see a Confederate flag, but it doesn't stir up fear in me.
Interesting.
Because I didn't grow up in America. Do you know what I mean? I didn't experience firsthand as a child the dangers of being surrounded or being in the company of somebody who has a Confederate flag on their car and the values they might hold and things like that.
Interesting.
So I was very like, it's just, oh, that's a cool thing. Like, that's interesting. And I was just like, oh, that's weird. Like, that would be my thing with it. That's weird. And someone's getting livid behind me. And I'm like, why are you angry? Right? But to the person with the Confederate flag, they don't know. They don't care. We look the same. Their thoughts are the same, right? So when you were mentioning that, it really, when you were talking about your experience with that, I think you also alluded to it, but it really was speaking to me how it is very important to take responsibility of the nostalgia that we feel. And this is a whole other topic that I'm going to talk about another time, because I believe I'm a strong believer in taking responsibility. And I do know from the friends I have and I've had that not everybody feels that way. Not everyone feels like we need to take responsibility for everything we do. Some people that I know believe that we can't control a lot of stuff. And again, those are one of the things where I feel like it can get very hairy, because I'm like, you can't control a lot of stuff that happens, but you can control a lot of stuff that you do. Right. I think your actions are well within your ability to control. And even when you make mistakes, you have the ability to try and do better the next time. And why I'm saying that is, in things like this, I remember our first year, someone who shall not be named was really pissing me off by upsetting you. And I really I hate when stuff like that happens. I just hate it. It just, like, now thinking about it is making me angry again. I don't like it when people interact with people without care for how what they're doing is impacting the other person. And in the context of nostalgia, I think we might not be responsible for, especially as children, the memories that we hold dear, because it is true, anything that's comfortable for you, or like Alex and I were talking about last week, anything that happens that you benefit from, especially as a child, you're not necessarily inclined to see it as a bad memory. But then when you get to a point where you have more information and you know that memory that was good for you is very bad for someone, I think at that point you have the opportunity to make new decisions, like you were saying, to say, this memory that was good for me was bad for someone. So I need to take responsibility and let go of some of the comfort I find in that memory, so that this world can be a better place for myself and this person to live in, because it is selfish for me to hold on to this memory and wish for simpler times, when simpler times means harsher, way more difficult times for other people. It's not easy, but what's the other option is the way I think about it. Like, whenever I advocate or talk about things like this, it's not because I think, oh, it's intuitive or duh. It's not necessarily about that. It's about, what is the alternative? Are you suggesting that it is just as plausible or just as good for me to hold on to a memory that is so harmful to another person just so that I can have my memory. Like,
so true.
Nostalgia in that way can be a gift, because it can be a lens through which you look back at how your past has evolved, and how you can build a new future from it. Like how you can make new memories that are beneficial to your children or to the next generation that comes after you.
Yes, so true.
And I remember in my own case, I had to start, and this has been something I remember in school. We had to talk to each other in the community, like in our organization as Africans, and say, and like we all talked about this. There are things about us as Africans that you can't relate to as African American, and vice versa. But we are here in your country where you're treated this way, and we will stand by you, and we will let go of our desire to be liked, or the fact that the cop out of like, well, this is not about me. Because people tend to do that. People only think that prejudice exists from people who have power, or very clear power. You can look the same. For example, for me, I can look the same and sound different. And that could be used as an advantage to me that's a disadvantage to someone else. And I can use that opportunity to stand for that person, to support that person. I don't need to say, oh, well, I wasn't considered in your number, so I'm just going to head out now and let you continue suffering, when you see something that's clearly wrong. So in that moment, when we've had that information, what I'm trying to say is we can build new memories. We can choose discomfort. Like choosing discomfort is an option. It's okay to choose, in my opinion, it is okay to choose discomfort, because if you always choose comfort, and you and I talk about this all the time, in this generation, choosing comfort is such a priority. And I think it's the same thing. It's just worded differently now. People are on purpose trying to only choose comfort. Yes. I don't think that that's helpful.
Yeah, it's so true.
I don't think that that's helpful. Being only surrounded by things that make you happy, I think can be very detrimental to your growth as a person. For example, and I don't mean to make light of anything that you've been through as a child, but some of those hard things that you faced, I feel like have shaped who you are in a way, because you've chosen to let them make you a better person, not a bitter person, not a bad person. And I think that was a choice you made, because you could have chosen to be any kind of way. But your priority, this is tying back to what you were saying about interacting with your future self. I think it's very important, like you mentioned, to have a good idea of who we want to be. Because even for me, sometimes I think about it like in terms of how I should react, or how I want to react to something, or how I want to interact with something. But when I think about who I want to be, I'm like, I have to make a decision now that can help me be who I want to be. And that decision requires me to be uncomfortable now. Whether that's not getting angry, or as angry as I'd like, or not reacting in the way I would, or hurting someone the way I want to, or neglecting something or ignoring something, or embracing my own comfort for another person's discomfort. It could mean a lot of things, but I think the core idea is just taking responsibility and really listening to the people around us. Like, listening to how our experiences are affecting them. Because I took this test a few years ago about, I don't remember what it really was about, but talking about the things that motivate different people to give insight into their personality. And I got to find out, with no surprise at all, that I'm someone who really believes in interconnectedness. I do think that the things I do affect other people. I'm actually very conscious of that. Like, if one of the things that can hurt me the most is when I find out something I'm doing affected somebody in a negative way. It really gets to me, because I really try to not be someone who causes irreparable damage to someone. I don't want to be there's the other part of me that thinks that there's healing, but I still don't want to be the reason someone spends a lot of time trying to heal themselves. I just don't want to be that person. So you also mentioned something about holding room for growing complexity. I really, really liked that. Like, I just wanted to reiterate that and this is a term y'all in the arts and humanities use. I love when you guys talk. You talk about like holding room, creating space, safety. I love the terms you guys use. It's so like nice and polished. But I liked it, and I thought it was a very poignant reminder for us to be able to. I think it all goes back to really being self-conscious to me, like, or self-aware. Just coming into the world thinking more about things, which is another reason I created this podcast, because I think if we all thought more about a lot of things, if we spent more times in our heads, when we actually show up, it might be better. I don't know. It's a theory, but that's what I think.
So too. I think like I know we've talked about like comfort, or what does it mean to like be uncomfortable, or and I think so much of that is like, before I used to think of it as like, oh, you know, maybe only in material ways, like I shouldn't like necessarily like try to live like a super luxurious life and cause harm to others by like my choices and, you know, over accumulating things I don't need or something. But I realized like maybe also that was like, for me anyway, like that was like just like a one-sided way of looking at it, because I think what I've realized is almost even the more challenging thing in some ways is like to find the ways you're being comfortable in your own mind or within yourself, and then to kind of like face those things internally, and then have the courage to kind of really look at yourself and find those, you know, it's hard, but I think finding the moments where like you've really caused someone else pain or been in pain, and be able to look at that and accept the kind of discomfort of it and face it, I think is like kind of almost in some ways harder than you know, the discomfort that might come by like giving up something material. In a way, it's harder to do the inner stuff, I think.
Speak on that, because it's so true. Like when our first year, when we lived where we lived, I don't want to call names of things just for privacy, but where we used to live, we had the opportunity to interact with a lot of people, and you'd find ideas like that where people who were trying to make meaningful change in the world, a lot of them thought that meant living a simpler lifestyle in terms of how much money they made. And even some would go as far as, I remember I had a conversation with someone who thought all rich people should die, like literally. And some people just have these really strong opinions about wealth. And to some extent, I see what they're saying. It's not that, I don't think it's unfounded, their feelings, but I do think that I totally agree with you. The difficulty is changing your heart. Because if you have the right heart, you can have all the money in the world and it's going to go to good use. If your heart is right, someone can put all the wealth in the world in your hands, and it's going to go towards the right things because your heart is in the right place. So I don't think necessarily the problem is about the money per se. Even in the Bible, I know there's somewhere it says the love of money is the root of evil. And it's not money that's the root of evil. It's the love for it. It's where your heart posture about it is. That's what causes evil. The money itself is just a thing.
It's neutral.
How you interact with money can be what causes evil or causes good. And I feel very strongly that my generation, or just the world I live in, we don't like to take responsibility. Even myself, when I'm taking responsibility, it's not like I'm like, oh, yay, responsibility. We don't love responsibility, but I think it is important that we do take responsibility.
I totally agree.
Yeah. Thank you for that. That was very, I loved that little banter there.
So nice to hear what you're thinking.
So thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. I want to wind down and go to the last couple questions and just ask you to talk about where do you see nostalgia having a bigger role than is acknowledged or admitted. So I think it's kind of along the lines we've spoken on, talked about now, but like, where do you think nostalgia should be more emphasized than it is, like, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. I think, like, I guess in our last kind of question, we were talking about maybe the ways in which nostalgia can be harmful. So, like, I guess I would acknowledge that as, like, one of the areas that could be thought about. But on the other hand, also, I think it's making me think of the ways in which nostalgia could be a tool towards other possible futures. So I was reading this one author, scholar Tina Kemp, who talks about the notion of the loophole and how it's almost like a sanctuary or a breath away from the weight of the world that we live in, or the oppressive frameworks we find ourselves in, that allow us to envision or enact or dream and imagine other possible futures. So I think nostalgia in that way could also maybe be a bit of a loophole or a sanctuary or an avenue that we can use towards envisioning and imagining, like I mentioned before, like the worlds we are making, and a breath away also from some of the constraints we might find ourselves in our everyday life. So I think, like, sometimes life does feel heavy, and we can revisit, like, moments or spaces that allow us to call forward other feelings. And I think that can also be, like, a point of departure, or like a springboard towards we're thinking about what we want to create in our own life, or the type of world we want to make collectively. I think it can allow us to, like, think about like, when did I feel most safe, and, like, what were the elements in those environments that allow me to feel safety or joy, or lightheartedness. Like, I think all those things are so important, because there's a reason we're trying to grasp for them, so then we can call them forward and allow them to kind of serve as a tool that kind of shapes or gives a mapping towards what we might want to make. So I think that nostalgia can be both things, and it can have like a very it can have a very powerful role, I guess. And in some ways it could either be like a maybe not so uplifting one if it's like ignoring the harm, but it could also serve like as an uplifting one if we use it in kind of with an awareness internally as to like what we're making.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love how you put that, because listening to a lot of my friends lately, because I will plug this again, I just happen to know the best people in the world. I don't know. That's just how I'm feeling. I love it. And so far it's checking out, because I've been hearing a lot lately, and I've been interpreting it as perspective is everything. So we can be faced with pretty similar things or pretty different things, but we can interact with those things differently depending on how we look at those things. Right. I used to really hate the glass half full, glass half empty analogy. I still don't love it, but I respect it now. I respect it because it is true. How you look at something determines how you feel about it, or what you end up feeling about it. Because to an extent, I think we do have some power over our feelings, but not a lot. Or I don't know what a lot is. It's hard for me to say stuff like that because I'm like, what is the measurement of a lot? I will just go with some. We do have some power over how we are feeling. But the part of us that doesn't have power over how we're feeling, I think we can get some of that power back by the way we're looking at things. And so, like you were saying, if we're interacting with nostalgia, as I love how you said, it can be a springboard. I love that terminology, or a point of launching, and how it can be a safe haven. We can consciously hold moments that we know are going to bring us comfort in the future. And that's very helpful for people who are separated from and the example coming to my head is just people they love for whatever reason. Could be distance, it could be death, it could be anything. But memories, holding memories very consciously in the present. I know I've been more intentional about doing that lately. And it's been a great experience, because actually it's very funny how thinking about the past can help me stay in the present more. Because if I know that one day this is going to be the past and I want to hold that, then I'm there. I'm like, I want to be here because I want to remember this. And I love
Same,
that.
It does help.
It's so cool. It does help. And when you said you did that at a young age, I was just like, another reason why Marika is uber cool. Because I only started doing this not too long ago, maybe a year ago. Because I just, from experiences and things that have happened to me, it became more glaring to be more aware of what's happening. I'm very blessed to be able to still collect stimuli even when I'm not trying. So I think I've kind of lazied through life with that, just knowing that I remember things I didn't even try to remember. You know? But because I didn't choose what I remembered, there were things I really wanted to remember clearly that I didn't. And knowing that and how it really caused me pain that I couldn't remember some things that I really wanted to remember has made me approach decisions or approach my interactions with more intentionality. So I can be having a conversation with my mom, or like, and even our conversation right now, I'm just like, I just want to be here, because in the future, I want to remember this. I want to remember how great I'm feeling now. Just being able to share the blessing of having conversations like this and just talking. I don't think people understand how much I love just picking people's brains. I just love hearing what people have to think, especially people that I respect and I think are wise. Because I will admit, I don't want to give people the impression that I just love listening to anyone. No, there are people I certainly do not like to listen to, and I'll probably talk about that another time. But yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I think what I got from that, and I'm not saying this so that you can get the same thing I got. You could get something different. I don't want to control what you get from this, but what I got from that was that I need to take ownership of how I show up in the present moment, because one day my current present moment will be a past memory, and I kind of have some say in how that memory is going to show up.
So true.
And it can be very powerful. So I should not underestimate the value of staying present in the moment, because that'll be tomorrow that'll be nostalgic for me. And if I do this moment right, then that nostalgia can really be beneficial to me.
That's so nice. Yeah, I like that.
So that was, I learned that from you, Marika. Sorry, Dr. St. Rocio. Finally, we are we're close to the end of the interview, or our conversation. But I wanted to ask if there's anything you would like to add. I told Alex, maybe I'll say this every single time, I just really love this question, because I just learned about the question recently, and I love learning. So I'm still very fascinated by the fact that I don't know why I didn't think of this before someone told me, but they're like, you can ask someone, is there anything that you want to ask? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's so true. Nice. Because then you give them the opportunity to tell you what they think, if you missed it, or you neglected or forgot to ask something that they really wanted to talk about, it gives them the space to do that. So I want to give you the space if there's anything you'd like to add.
That's so nice. I love that. Yeah, I don't have too much more to add. I just loved how you kind of summarized the how we can be empowered in how we recall moments in time, or how present we are. And I guess like the thing I'm really interested in right now is just finding other ways to conceive of time. And I think that does connect to nostalgia and how we pick the moments that we want to hold close to our heart.
Yeah.
And so
yeah,
just everything you said, I think, is also something that I'll carry with me in terms of our responsibility then in our present moment to both be aware of what is happening around us and how that might affect or impact the ways in which we're linked to each other, and then also our responsibility towards ourselves and what we're building for ourselves, or the future worlds we're making collectively, and what that means for the actions we're taking now. So I think just everything you said really connected with me, and I'll keep thinking about it.
Me too. I'm just thinking now, which is not allowing me to stay present, but I'm just like, we're going to talk about time. There's no way we're not having a conversation about it.
What a ride. What a ride. I'm so grateful that I got to have these conversations. Thank you all so much for listening, and I especially want to thank Alex and Marika for giving me their time, giving me their wisdom and insight. These last 4 weeks have been so great. I know I had those interviews and we had those conversations, but I listened to them over and over again. I'm making this as much for people as I am for myself. I feel so enriched by these conversations, and I just feel grateful to be able to listen to how different people that I respect are really thinking about things that I consider very important. And I'm definitely going to reevaluate how I interact with my nostalgia and how that can make me a better person and make me show up better in the world that I live in. And I hope that it will inspire some more thinking in you. I hope that you will contemplate these things, and I hope that you will in turn make decisions based on what you've heard and what you've concluded in your own mind that help you show up as a better person in the world and leave the world better than you found it. And I hope again that you've had a blast, as much a blast as I have listening to these podcasts and or to these interviews. And next week we're going to be doing something very different. You'll just have to tune in to find out. But thank you again, if I haven't already said thank you for your time. I really do not take it for granted, and I'm grateful. And I'll see you on another episode of Contemplations, or I'll talk to you. I don't know why I keep saying see you. We're not seeing each other. Anyway, up until then, enjoy the rest of your day, night, and talk to you soon. Bye.